morning and welcome to another FasTrax webinar. This is a weekly event we do every Friday at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern, where we go over various topics of the FasTrax software. You can see a list of all these events if you go to our website, FTx.com. Choose the FTx Lifeline tab at the top of the screen. Scroll down this page to the webinar button. Choose that. This will show you a list of all of our upcoming webinars that you can register for to be reminded about. See a list of our previous webinars that have recordings, and sign up for the newsletter to receive emails of upcoming webinars. Today we're going to be talking about the offline mode functionality in the point of sale. Now, the way the point of sale works in a corporate environment and in a normal environment is there's going to be a database that runs on Microsoft SQL Express. And that database is going to be what houses all the information. That's going to be your pricing, your cost, your items, your employees, buy downs, discounts, everything that the system does is housed in that database. That database is going to be residing on one single register. So if you have any secondary registers in your store, those secondary machines are going to be reading and writing to that main database. This is generally going to be stored on register 1. Now, in the case of that register 1 going down, in the case of a network failure, there's a variety of causes that can basically make it to where those secondary machines can't talk to register 1. And if it can't talk, if it can't communicate with register 1, then without offline mode, you're dead in the water. You can't do any sales. POS just doesn't see anything there, and it can't do anything because it can't see that information it needs to read. So what you can do is you can set up something called offline mode. And what this does is that will, on a scheduled time, it will basically look at that register 1. It will copy all necessary data from the main register, register 1, and pull that to all secondary machines. That's done, like I said, via Windows scheduled task using an executable in the FasTrax folder. And in the event of a network failure or that machine going offline, the machine will swap to offline mode. You'll put in the code to actually log in, and then you can do sales as normal. Then when the network or computer is restored, all those sales that you've done in that time period are going to be pushed back to that master database, that master machine that houses the database. And then if you're in a corporate environment, exporter will run, grab all those new sales, and then push that to corporate. All seamless. So first and foremost, we're going to look at how the secondary machines communicate to the main machine. And if we go to our Windows Explorer, we go to our C drive, the default installation is going to be the C FasTrax folder. There's going to be a file in there called the FasTrax SQL.udl. This is going to be what points that secondary machine to the main machine where the database resides. In this case, I'm a secondary machine in this setup, and I'm pointed to another machine on our network. So I can open the POS up, and I can bring up sales. Everything's perfectly fine. It sees that network connection. Now, I want to set this machine up for offline mode in case that network connection fails. So what I'll do on this secondary machine is I'll log in, and if you have permission, you'll go to your actions, settings, and the offline mode settings. Now, you'll want to make sure that that checkbox for this is a remote register is checked, and that will then make it to where these text fields are editable. So what you'll do is you'll then put in this local SQL instance name, and what that is going to be the software, the Microsoft software that actually hosts that database. You're going to have to make sure that's installed, which it is by default whenever FasTrax installs machines to every single machine. If this is installed, then you just point to that instance and then the database you want to use for that particular offline mode database. Generally, it's going to be that same database name as on the main register, the ILSA_SQL. And then you put in your local user and password. That's going to be what's used to log into SQL. Once that's set, you'll save that. Now in your scenario, it will probably be called at localhost/FasTrax. Localhost essentially means this machine that I'm currently on /FasTrax. That's the default instance that FasTrax uses whenever the software is installed. And then this other information will be the same. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. then what we're going to do is we're going to set up that scheduled task to copy data. So to do that, we'll go to our Start menu, and we'll go to the Task Scheduler. This is a built-in Windows functionality that lets you just schedule certain programs to run at certain times of the day. We want to build one called the FasTrax Data Sync. So what I'll do is I will create just a basic task. And in this case, I'm just going to call this FasTrax Data Sync. And I'll choose Next. And I want this to run every day, so I'm going to leave that default daily checked. I'm going to set this to run, let's say that my store opens at 7 o'clock in the morning. I want this to run an hour earlier. So I'll set this to run at 6 a.m. every day. And then we want this task to start a program. And then we have to basically point to that program we need it to start. So we'll choose the Browse button here. And by default, for me, it's going to the local host, the FasTrax folder. You may have to actually choose this PC, choose your C drive, choose the FasTrax folder. And what we're looking for is we're looking for a program called FasTrax POS Data Sync. That program right there. So I'm going to highlight that and select that and choose Open. And then for the arguments, we do indeed need an argument. And that argument for this is going to be the /silent. That basically means that it will open, do its thing, and then close. So the user never has to follow any prompts. We'll choose Next, and then we'll go ahead and finish. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start this task. What it would do is it would by default run every day at 6 a.m. I'm just going to go ahead and force that to run, and we'll see a little program that starts up. Background, we see that it's automatically opened, it's doing its thing, and then it's going to close. Now, just so you can see what that actually does, I'm going to open this program manually. And we're going to go to that data sync program, and this is just the program that actually gets kicked off. What this does is each of these checkboxes you see is a certain table that's actually required for that point of sale to run if it's offline, if it's not connected to the main register. So what this program does is it's going to copy all the necessary files to that temporary database, and then close itself. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and then now I'm going to emulate an environment where I can't log in. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to open that data link file. I'm going to break this connection. I'm just going to put an A there because that means that instance does not exist. So now when I open the point of sale up, it's going to sit here and try for a second. And then it will give me a message stating that I can't see the database. I can't see that register that hosts the store's database. And then offer, do you want to use offline mode? I'm going to choose yes. Then I'm presented with a code. This code is meant for if in the event that this happens, the store employee needs to contact someone from their manager environment, corporate environment, to know that there's a network problem. There's got to be a reason why the secondary machine can't communicate with the main register. So this is in place as a safeguard to make sure that everyone that needs to be aware of this is aware of this. Now, what the cashier will do is they will provide this code. And in that FasTrax folder, right below the POS data sync, is the generator. There's an offline mode key generator. So what you'll do is you will enter in that code and then choose generate. That will generate you a new code. I'll just enter that 5681 here and then choose OK, and that lets me into the system. And then at this point, I can log in as normal. And then notice there's things that are grayed out. That's because certain functionality like communicating with corporate, viewing messages, those are going to be turned off until that network connectivity is restored to the main database. But things like opening the POS and ringing the POS cells, I can do. So I can pick up an item here, I can ring that item up and do sales, and everything works perfectly fine. So once the POS network connectivity is restored, which I'll go ahead and do that. That UDL file and remove that A that I input. When the POS is opened, it will see that network connectivity is restored, and then it's going to push that data that was saved to that local database to the master database. And then now I'm back online when I log back in on the secondary machine, and it's back in that normal environment where I can clock in, I can send messages, I can do everything I normally could do. Now, in offline mode, just remember you can't do those certain functionality, and one thing that you can't do is if you're using integrated credit card processing via DataCap NettyPay, that probably also runs on that main register. So in the event that you're offline and you're using that integrated card processing via DataCap NettyPay, you're not going to be able to process credit cards because more than likely if the main register is offline, then everything about it's going to be offline. That's going to be including FasTrax and your credit card processing. So that's another reason why that prompt for the code is in place, because we want to make sure that somebody is aware, that needs to be aware that there's going to be a problem with that at that store, either the network or the computer itself. So a couple precautions on this is whenever you're setting your offline mode up, you're in the offline mode settings, you want to make sure first and foremost that that database there is totally blank. That's very, very important. So you don't want to use a database that's been used in the past, because if it's not completely blank, then whenever we're pushing data after network connectivity is restored on the secondary machine, then it can push old data with that. That's why it's important to make sure that database is blank. After it's pushed, it's going to wipe out all of those cells that were done in that database to make sure that it's once again blank. So every time you go into offline mode, you're essentially, all sales data is going to be totally blank. You have just the necessary, what I like calling static data, your items, your cost, your price, your buy downs, etc. You have just that as your foundation, so you can just do sales and nothing more. You have just exactly what you need. All right. So once again, just remember you have to have that Windows scheduled task set up. You can name it whatever you'd like. It's just important to make sure you have that set to run whenever there are definite times that the main register is going to be online. And this can be set up on, you say you're in a multi-register environment where you have one main register and 10 secondary registers. You have the same thing set up on all these secondary machines. Each register is going to be set up for offline mode with its own scheduled task, with its own local SQL database. That's going to happen on every single machine. All right, so I hope everybody learned something today. Once again, these events are on our website at goftx.com. Choose the FTX Lifeline button for that webinar button. Choose that, and that'll bring you a list of all of our upcoming webinars and past webinars. If you have any suggestions on future webinar topics, let us know at info@goftx.com. If you have any questions on this topic or previous topics, let us know at websupport@FasTraxPOS.com. Thank you, and have a great weekend.